When I first heard about the Røde competition, I was actually just about to register my NTG2 I bought for an upcoming project I've been working on for quite some time. And when I went onto the webpage, there it was, big and bold, Røde competition. So I then referred back to this notebook I keep filled with notes, movie ideas, and chunks of dialogue. And although none of my ideas or my current project would fit the 5-minute time limit or the 3-month production period, I looked over this one bit of dialogue I had written just as practice and decided to use it to write It Comes Around. So when I originally wrote the dialogue, I developed such a clear image of the J character, and I knew I would never have proper time or resources to do casting. So I did what I typically would never do, and cast myself, being that I'm 6'5" and broad and just look awkward on camera. But I figured since I'd be seated the whole time, and that even though I'm only 19, I have features that can give me an older appearance, and it would essentially make the scenario more convincing. But it did also bring up another creative challenge, and that is directing and starring in your own project. Which turned out to actually be quite beneficial, because it's one thing to watch, stand there and watch two actors, play out your vision, but it's completely another to be inside of that vision and being able to control it with your own performance, and it ultimately gave better communication as well between the entire group. So as far as casting, all that was really left was to find my supporting actor, being that my dad and my roommates agreed to fill in the mafioso roles. So I did at first have an idea of who can be convincing in the role and give me a good performance, but unfortunately our schedules just didn't match, and we had to cancel. But one day I was talking to my friend John about the dilemma, and just a random conversation, he mentioned his brother and an old friend of mine had moved back into town, and I immediately knew that I would be able to, one, get a solid performance out of him, and two, he would be physically very convincing for the role, and we would match. We would fill in that age gap. So after casting and gathering a group of willing friends and family that want to be there to help out, setting a date for the shoot that would correlate with everyone's schedule, and helping my friend Luke, who lives in Ontario and wanted to be there for the shoot and the editing portion, book his plane ticket, all that was really left was just a month of polishing and planning, which included revisions to the script, any kind of new changes I wanted to make, gathering any more equipment that I would need, making sure everything would work properly, Skype rehearsals with Billy, which turned out great, really helped benefit, we were able to discuss what worked and what didn't, and then I even made a rough cut of the movie by combining a recording of Billy's lines and then my lines, and throwing them together in Premiere with Microsoft Paint images, which, as you can tell, I'm quite the aficionado. Truly a transcending version of Dolly, as maybe you can probably tell. But essentially this helped me get a good idea of how long this movie was going to run, as well as the cuts that I wanted to make. So this really helped out a lot towards post-production, and really gave me clear guidelines of what I needed to do. So the day the shoot finally came, Luke had flown in the night before, and it started off a little bumpy, being that we left 2 hours late. One of the crew members, Jacob, got to the location 3 hours early, and we also got lost along the way after picking up Billy and John. So it was a little rough. We lost a lot of time there, and kind of we had to change the schedule. But as soon as we pulled the location, everyone was there. I could tell that they were all ready to go. We eventually got in a pretty good, solid rhythm, and we dished out a good 4 takes in the master shot. You know, where it was taken from his perspective from the back seat. And afterwards, we went inside to take a break and went over the footage and the audio and make sure everything was set up properly. We had the NTG2 set in the dash between Billy and I. We figured that there would be enough reverb and acoustics that the mic would be able to solidly pick both of us up, and thankfully it did. So afterwards we ran through a bit more coverage and didn't run into many issues at all until this happened.
Oh, sorry, John.
Really touch me.
The
pipes tonight.
No way. No fucking way.
Septic tankery.
Yeah, every day they pump their septic tank.
He is about to back it up. Why?
Not it. You idiot. Way too wide.
We're gonna need a second truck. Can you bring your buddy in with his septic Central Valley truck?
Matter of fact, get your whole company down here. I want to speak to your manager. Does your manager have a septic tank truck too? Tell him to bring it.
If he has a bigger truck, we need him. You know, it's different when it smells bad outside and you're like, oh, it smells like shit, but like, this is shit. Like, we already know what this is, and it's human feces.
And finally, the truck pulled away around 40 minutes later, and we all got back in our positions. We hopped right to it, and then our truck died.
Car's dead!
Yeah, it didn't start that time, did it?
Does anyone have jumper cables?
I do.
You have jumper cables?
So after toying around with that for a while, we decided it was best we hopped right into the headshot sequence while we still had time. Now, to me, the shot wasn't only the climax of the film, but rather a reimagining of how big this world actually is. You know, the entire film has been set within the perspective of this car, and it's just been 2 schmoes talking. And now these new characters roll in and just abruptly kill both the main characters off. So it's my hopes with this that the audience kind of takes time to reconsider how much more is actually going on the outside of that car. No! In the fucking... We made sure to add extra emphasis on sound design fully because we didn't just want the perspective of the camera to isolate the audience and the characters, but rather what that isolation would sound like. From the sliding of my leather jacket to what ambient noise would sound like within the car, to the gravel being torn up when the cars pin Billy and I in. It was that, perfecting the sound was our biggest concern throughout post-production. If I was to ever give any advice to aspiring filmmakers, it would be a lesson that I learned while making It Comes Around, and that is if you need to make sure that your story is completely to your satisfaction, to the point where you're prepared to allow it to take over your psyche. I know it sounds crazy, but it's that amount of crazy that's going to give you proper discipline and confidence in your own project. And luckily for me, I had an amazing group of family and friends that fall under the same category practically, who always had confidence in me, and that is the most refreshing thing that you could possibly imagine for an aspiring filmmaker, and that is definitely something that I'll always carry with me.